President Biden says he will make them pay for the horrors in Del Rio, but who should be paying? And where did those 14,000 illegal immigrants go? Quite possibly to a town near you. Good evening, I'm Leland Vittert. Welcome to the program. Happy Friday. We've made it. In his first public comments on the border crisis in a week, President Biden came out swinging today with language you might expect from his predecessor.
It's outrageous. I promise you those people will pay. They will be, there's an investigation underway now, and there will be consequences.
The president is talking about the border agents on horseback seen circling their reins to drive back Haitians coming across the Rio Grande earlier this week. Not to be outdone by the president in his rhetoric, here is the vice president.
It also evoked images of some of the worst moments of our history where that kind of behavior has been used against the indigenous people of our country, has been used against African Americans during times of slavery.
However, new reporting shed light on what may or may not have happened in those pictures. Our Nexstar owned and operated station in El Paso, Texas, talked to the news photographer who took them. Here is his reaction to the White House and how the White House is describing these pictures.
I didn't ever see him whip anybody with the thing. He was swinging it, but I didn't see him actually whip someone with it. So that's something that can be easily misconstrued.
I didn't see him whip anybody. Remember those words. More on that in a minute. But first, let's talk about what's happening in Del Rio, Texas right now. Frankly, nothing. Remember the thousands of people under the bridge? They're gone. The DHS secretary today told us where some of them went. 30,000 migrants had been encountered in Del Rio in the past 2 weeks. More than 12,000 will have a chance to make their case for protection before a U.S. immigration judge. An estimated 8,000 returned to Mexico. 2,000 were expelled to Haiti. However, Jorge Ventura found that thousands were also released into the United States and given bus or plane tickets to a destination of their choice, with little more than a request by the Border Patrol to check in 60 days from now. We're going to check in with Jorge in just a minute about his new reporting. As you can see, he's still in Del Rio. But tonight, we can tell you there are more on the way. NBC News reports more than 20,000 Haitians are gathered in Colombia for possible migration to the United States. DHS is also tracking groups of 1,500 in Panama, 3,000 in Peru. That's according to an internal document from DHS. Remember, these aren't Haitians in Haiti escaping the poverty there. These are Haitians living in South America. Many have been there for years, who see this as a golden opportunity to head north. How do we know this? Because they speak Spanish in the clips we see, not the native language of Haiti, which is Creole. Take a listen to what these people in Panama and Colombia are saying about when and if they'll come to America.
Está todo mundo esperando decisión do governo dos Estados Unidos para ver si eso calma y cómo ellos pueden entrar.
How they can enter. Today, the DHS secretary did everything but give them an open invitation, as did the White House press secretary from the White House podium.
The building of safe, orderly, and humane pathways. And third, rebuilding an asylum system and a refugee program that were dismantled in the prior administration.
Okay. It's pretty clear listening to the president, vice president, and DHS secretary. They are far more outraged and horrified by the image on the left rather than the one on the right. Once again, the DHS secretary.
Those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism.
Former acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolfe standing by to talk about that, but we start with Jorge Ventura. Quite obviously an expert on the border, has been going down there for years reporting on this. Jorge, you also live in Washington, D.C. Report from the border. A lot of criticism today for Mr. Biden that he has not come to the border, nor really has the vice president. If either of them came down there, even for a few minutes, what would they learn that they couldn't learn in Washington?
Well, they will learn that local communities like Del Rio, Uvalde, and McAllen, all these border towns, the huge impact it has on the local economy when it comes to having to exhaust all the resources dealing with these migrants. Here in Del Rio, this town of 35,000 only has 5 ambulances. Well, those ambulances can't be treated for the taxpayers right now. They're focused on the Haitian migrants. Not only that, we're seeing crime go up in cities like Uvalde where drugs are running in. I just spoke to a pastor in the McAllen area who said that he was renting out his apartments, and his apartments have been used as human smuggling rooms for the cartels. And these are the type of stories you hear throughout. But today I spoke to a few Del Rio residents who are just absolutely frustrated and angry with the Biden administration that they continue to politicize these type of moments. There, the big criticism right now that we're hearing from here, folks on the ground, is, why does it take this image of what appears at that when it was falsely reported as whipping migrants? Why does it take something like that for the White House to be talking about the border issue? Why not come down and speak to those folks here and see how it's impacted them directly, especially the taxpayers in this town of Del Rio?
Well, Del Rio, Uvalde, we'll be down in McAllen this weekend and next week with you as well. What's going on behind you with the flashing lights and the police cars?
So right behind me, Leland, we're here at the Del Rio Port of Entry. So the Port of Entry here is still shut off. We don't have an exact date when it opens. So this is a pretty big deal because this hugely, drastically impacts the local economy here in Del Rio. A lot of Mexican nationals actually living on the other side who work here can't attend to work. We actually spoke to some restaurant owners who can't open for business. It also impacts the school system and the taxpayer money that could go to that. Over 300 kids live in the Mexican side that go to school here in Valverde County cannot get here as well. So we still don't have any information when this port of entry closes, but as of today, there are no migrants living under this Del Rio bridge right now.
One thing that has really fascinated us about your reporting over the past week is the Chilean ID cards you found, how these Haitians knew to come to the Del Rio part of the Rio Grande where you could walk across the river, 14,000 people moving in this herd. Do you have any reporting on how they knew exactly how to do all of this and how they knew to say they were part of a family unit so they wouldn't be deported?
So one thing that we are hearing from Border Patrol sources is now that the news is coming out that the single male Haitians are being deported, they know now to claim that they are part of family units. Another big key that we actually also heard is that when these Haitian migrants were stuck in Tapachula, they had to pay human smugglers to at least get to Ciudad Acuña. But this is, like we said before, this is one of those few locations where the cartels are not actually there charging them to cross the river. So this is where they all ended up. And as of right now, we still have Haitians stuck on the Mexican side. And according to Mexican officials, they said they're willing to work with the Haitians on some type of temporary protected status to start working in Mexico. But we still have thousands that actually scattered throughout Mexico. And we'll see if they're going to be hitting areas like McAllen and that Rio Grande Valley, which is one of the hardest sections hit here in South Texas.
We're watching video, Jorge, of people just streaming across the Rio Grande where you are. I'm still fascinated, though. Is it a network? Is it smugglers that bring them up, that are paid to bring them from Panama and Colombia? How do they all coordinate this? Is it cell phone communications? Is it a Facebook page? How do they learn to ditch their Chilean IDs?
Well, this is all coordinated with human smugglers and cartels throughout South America and Central America and Mexico. The Spanish word for this is the coyotes, which means human smugglers. So these human smugglers, to be honest, Leland, one of the best things that actually happened for these bad guys is the Biden administration coming in and saying that we're removing the Remain in Mexico policy. They've used this as almost like a selling tactic point when it comes to convincing people to come up here. And the thing is, Leland, when these migrants can't afford the journey, they essentially turn into a denture servant here on the American side. We've seen some of that actually in California on the documentary we're working on, where these cartels smuggle these migrants in and use them as their labor force here back in the States. So that removal of the Remain in Mexico policy has really just opened the floodgates. And it's not just the Haitians, it's the Venezuelans, it's other South American countries, and hugely it's that Central American population that we continue to see impact that McAllen area.
Stunning reporting. Keep it up over the weekend, and we're going to check back with you on Monday. Jorge, thank you.
Thanks, Leland.
Good to see you. The DHS secretary has denounced the images of Border Patrol agents blocking Haitians from entering the United States. The president promised, as you heard, repercussions for those agents, but for what exactly? We bring in former acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolfe. Good to see you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, as always, for joining us. This sort of struck me. You have the images of the horses, and then you got the images of 14,000 people living in squalor under a bridge and just flowing across the Rio Grande. Back in the day when you were working for President Trump, would you have had to pay, or would your people have had to pay, quote unquote, for the guys on horses trying to keep people out of America, or for having 14,000 people living under a bridge?
Well, I think you know the answer to that. Obviously, we would be concerned about the folks under the bridge, and we would be solving that crisis instead of talking and vilifying the men and women of the Border Patrol and those law enforcement officers. Look, this is just another attempt by the left to go after law enforcement. They don't want to talk about the crisis. They don't want to talk about how to solve the crisis. Instead, they want to talk about pictures and photos and everything wrong with Border Patrol and law enforcement. And it's wrong. I'm pissed off about it. I think the president, the vice president, Secretary Mayorkas, they all owe each of those Border Patrol agents and officers an apology. The investigation is ongoing, but for them to make some of the comments that they made today is outrageous, and it's unjustified.
Your successor, by the way, Secretary Mayorkas, was asked about the president's comments in light of the investigation, also in light of the fact that there's no evidence that the reins of the horses were ever used as whips. Take a listen. No, we don't have that soundbite, but he basically said, before the facts are in, is it still helpful for investigations to use inflammatory language? And the secretary said, we know how to conduct an investigation with integrity. How do you conduct an investigation when the president says people are going to pay?
Well, look, this is just another example of both the secretary and the administration not being honest with the American people. Of course, you cannot have an investigation when you have the president talking about they will pay, you have the vice president talking about slavery, and then you have the DHS secretary talking about how he was horrified about of the images. What specifically was he horrified about? About the officers doing their job, what they were trained to do? So obviously they're trying to influence that investigation, which is being carried out by DHS. So I think we all know where this is going. And this is just, again, another attempt. They don't want to talk about the crisis. They're trying to, turn the attention away from their failures on getting this crisis under control after 8 months. You still have the secretary up there saying the border is closed, and yet you still have 200,000 illegal apprehensions a month. You have 14,000 Haitians under one bridge in Del Rio. The facts don't lie, and the facts speak for themselves. And it's extremely frustrating. He's lost the confidence of the men and women of the Border Patrol, of the law enforcement entity within the department, and that spells trouble at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm hoping that you can play this out for us, because we know that there are these 20 or 30,000 people right now caravanning up from South America through Mexico, watching what's being said at the White House podium. And I'm wondering what message they're getting, and then also what message the Border Patrol is getting about trying to do their job.
Yeah. Well, of course, look, the smugglers and the cartels and the traffickers, they market some of what our messaging is to those migrants. And so when you have the secretary and you have these comments being said today that talks about an asylum system, he talks about rebuilding an asylum system, which is just, it's fantasy, rebuilding a refugee system. We have those systems in place. But what he's doing is he's sending a signal to say, every one of you can come in and seek asylum, when they know the vast majority of them will never qualify for asylum. They've been living in Brazil. They've been living in other countries. If you have sought shelter and safety in a safe third country, you're ineligible for asylum here in the United States. DHS knows this. The administration knows this. They're not being honest with these folks.
All right. Well, appreciate you being with us, as always. As you know, we're heading to the border. Be there from McAllen. We're going to talk to you then and get your thoughts on the continuing crisis down there. Also, how the coyotes and the cartels are taking advantage of everything that's happening in Del Rio to bring over more drugs and people through McAllen and the Rio Grande. Good to see you, sir, as always. Enjoy the weekend.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. That's the domestic side of this crisis. There is a foreign policy, international side of it. Our adversaries, specifically China, are rubbing our faces in the border crisis. The Global Times, that's the state-sponsored media in China, posted this picture on Twitter from the Communist Party. The caption, "Old habits die hard," hashtag Haitian Lives Matter, hashtag racism. Global Times, of course, has never posted a political cartoon on China's genocide of the Uyghur Muslims or the countless other atrocities committed by the Chinese Communist Party. Bring in someone who knows a lot about that. Sheena Greitens, professor at the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs, University of Texas at Austin. Nice to see you, ma'am. Appreciate it. All right.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. What's the Chinese game here?
Yeah, so, first of all, let's just stop for a moment and note that this is a tweet posted by Global Times on Twitter, which is a medium that Chinese citizens don't have access to. And so, first of all, you have to realize that this is something that China is doing for an international audience. And what we've seen lately is that China has really escalated internationally its criticisms of American democracy. And it uses things like racial disparities or economic inequality or perceived instability at the border to argue that Western democracy is just a failed model of governance. And this is now taking place through what we call Wolfe warrior diplomacy, the idea that Chinese diplomats and the state media are being much more vocal about efforts to delegitimize Western and liberal democracy.
Yeah, and all of their diplomats have Twitter accounts that they use prolifically. I'm sure you follow many of them, as does the Global Times. This headline caught our eye. This is from The Sun, the UK newspaper. Hidden horrors, China carrying out Nazi-style experiments on Muslims with organs cut out and mystery injections. Chilling report claims. It goes on, inmates in the communist regime's network of re-education camps are being given mysterious pills, injections, even having organs removed while still alive. Is The Sun overselling in that headline, or is that actually going on?
No, look, two successive administrations in the United States, the Trump administration and now the Biden administration, have deemed that what's happening in Xinjiang, what's happening with Uyghur Muslims and China's treatment of its Uyghur Muslim citizens is crimes against humanity, which is the designation that we use for North Korea. And also, both administrations have found that their treatment of Uyghur Muslims constitutes genocide. So what you're seeing here
real quick, I only got about 30 seconds. Is that what is the reports in The Sun and the truth of what's happening in China? Is that causing the Chinese, or is the Chinese view putting out these kinds of tweets about what's happening on the U.S. border is sort of trying to create a moral equivalence?
Yeah, it's trying to create this sense of false equivalence to legitimate its own system of governance, to legitimate CCP rule, and really deflect international criticism of the human rights abuses that are taking place on a massive scale in China, not just among Uyghur Muslims, but also much more broadly against religious and ethnic minorities and average Chinese citizens.
You said it best. They use our own freedoms against us. They're tweeting about us while they don't give their own citizens Twitter. Professor, nice to see you as always. Thank you.
Great to see you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. All right. The confusing messaging on COVID has only been the consistent thing throughout the pandemic, the only consistent thing. Why the CDC chief says overruling her experts is not about politics. Plus, the founding fathers accounted for a lot back in the 1700s, but age limits on elected officials might have slipped their mind. We're going to tell you the near 90 senators, the near 90-year-old senator who's just declared for re-election. This morning, my phone alerted me to news from 88-year-old Iowa Republican Senator Chuck Grassley. 88 years old, you think maybe he's stepping down. No, nor is he retiring at the end of his term. He announced his re-election campaign in a tweet. Here's the tweet. It's 4 a.m. in Iowa, so I'm running. I do that 6 days a week before I start the day. I want you to know what Barbara and I have decided. I'm running for re-election. A lot more to do for Iowa. The 88-year-old has held the seat for 40 years, since 1981, before I was born. If he wins, this will be his 8th term, and he would be 95 when it ends. Hard to leave a cushy job, perhaps. Our representatives work far less than the average American. The 117th Congress, convened on January 3rd, will conclude on January 3rd of 2023. In those 2 years, the House is scheduled to meet for 160 days, the Senate 158 days. Congressional leaders have done little to change this, even though the public would support it. 86% of Americans polled believe term limits should be set. Most believe it would improve performance and prevent corruption. But our congressional leaders have little or no interest in imposing these for themselves. Francis Rooney, former ambassador to the Vatican, former Florida congressman who term limited himself and retired after just 4 years, joins us now. All right, do we need age limits, term limits, or both, sir?
Well, we definitely need term limits. I mean, Senator Grassley is a great American and a great patriot, but he's been there a long time. There are 340 million Americans. I'm sure that there's a lot of people that could serve our country well. Not to take anything away from him, but term limits are what I think the founders envisioned, okay? They envisioned the servant leader comes off of his farm or his business, serve for a while, and go back to it, not a career as a professional politician.
Is the reason, you're a student of history from Georgetown University, among other places, written on history as well. Is the reason the founders didn't put in term limits is because they couldn't imagine the idea of a professional political class, or they didn't think it was going to happen? What's the reasoning?
I don't think they would have ever imagined that anyone would want to leave their entire life behind to go serve in the public realm forever. And they just wasn't considered part of their ethos. I mean, they had to beg Jefferson to come back off his farm. Adams did several different jobs, but didn't do the same jobs. And I don't think anybody would have imagined that they would find entrenched politicians or the so-called political class. Since we fought a revolution, they fought a revolution, quite frankly, to get rid of a political class in England.
You're a businessman in addition to former congressman and former ambassador. If 86% of your customers want something, why is it that congressional leadership seems so opposed to giving it to them?
Well, in a normal economic environment, that's what you would do. If your customers want something, you're going to figure out how to give it to them and add value. Otherwise, you're going to go out of business. But in politics, it's totally different. This elected business is a real racket. Between the media appearances that you create a persona for yourself, between the mail that the federal government pays for you to send out, between these ridiculous messaging bills that makes people think you're really doing something, you can create you can market your voters with their own money. It's a real racket.
It's interesting. You think about it, it's not just Republicans that you've talked about, or Chairman Grassley, but on the Democratic side, the combined age of the top three Democrats in the House, Pelosi, Hoyer, and Clyburn, 244 years old, which is as old as Congress itself. And the big problem with term limits is that they're unconstitutional. You need a constitutional amendment. That's awfully difficult to do. You had a bill that would have effectively term limited people by turning everybody's salary to $1 after 12 years in Congress, but leadership didn't like that, did they?
They did not at all. In fact, there were over 100 sponsors of term limit bills that required a constitutional amendment, which is just a joke and was going nowhere. And I had trouble scrounging up about 20 for my bill.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because they want to stay there. Look at all the people that have renounced their term limits pledge after they've been there 6 or 8 years.
Yeah. Congress saying one thing and doing another. You just never think that would happen in Washington.
Well, you think some guy that grew up in rural eastern Oklahoma or southern Missouri lives in D.C. for 8 or 10 years, wants to go back there and pick strawberries?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point. Mr. Ambassador, it's always good to see you, sir. My best to your wife.
Thank you, Leland. Look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time on a Friday night. Booster shots were denied by the FDA, but are now approved by the CDC. The messy messaging on COVID is still as widespread as the virus itself. But if you really want to get away from COVID, you could just move to Texas, because apparently the pandemic is over there. Marky Martin with us from the Lone Star State Fair when we come back.
Listen to the voices of the unvaccinated Americans who are lying in hospital beds, taking their final breath, saying, and literally we've seen this on television, if only I'd gotten vaccinated. This is literally a tragedy. Please don't let this become your tragedy. Get vaccinated.
The vaccine is free, it is safe, and it will save your life. So folks just need to get vaccinated.
But still, so many say they're not going to. Wonder why. President Biden and Vice President Harris today continued on their vaccine push, but in parts of the country, a lot of folks have just moved on from COVID, vaccinated or unvaccinated. In Texas, about 1 million people are going to show up for the state fair that was all but canceled last year. That's where we find News Nation's Marky Martin. I can imagine there's a lot of vendors and everybody else there is pretty happy to get back to normal, huh?
Absolutely. And Leland, the parade is passing, so I hope you can hear me. But this is opening night. Texans are out in full force, which is a sight for sore eyes, especially after last year. You know, this Texas State Fair was all but canceled because of COVID. In the name of safety, they made this just a drive-through event. And when I tell you it was bizarre to see corn dogs and State Fair prizes pass through the window, it was just odd. But on a bigger level, let's talk the economic impacts here. This thing is a moneymaker. This fair brings in $400 million a year. Last year, they lost $20 million because of this. Usually, about 2.5 million Texans come in for this one-month event. Only 21,000 cars made it through. So the domino effect is detrimental. Not to mention the State Fair funds local scholarships, funds local area farms here, and then the individual vendors, a lot of them couldn't bring back their employees. They didn't need all of them to work a drive-through fair, and they took hits. They made nowhere near the profits they're used to making, Leland.
All right, everything's bigger in Texas, including some of the problems you talk about. I can imagine getting people to work now is also an issue. Has that put any dent in the fried Oreo, Twinkie, or turkey leg on a stick options?
No, if you have time, I'll show you a few things.
Please.
This is the fried Frito pie. This was the best of the best this year. Then you've got the fried armadillo, which has melted, but it's Texas. Funnel cake with chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream on the inside. Then you have the fried Halloween. Candy corn on top of a pretzel, Oreo, chocolate syrup. But I'm going to answer your question, Leland. Earlier you said, what's the most caloric item there? And I want to get this right. It's the funnel cake bacon queso cheeseburger. I don't have it with me here, but the State Fair tells me it clocks in at north of 2,000 calories. Leland,
any one of those things sounds delicious on its own. Together, I'm not so sure about. Marky, enjoy the fair and at least have a fried Twinkie for me. We'll see you soon. Thank you. All right. The Biden CDC director today defied her own advisory panels, now recommending COVID booster shots for younger frontline workers, despite the panel saying it was not necessary for that group. As Politico puts it, booster confusion takes hold as Biden announces expanded eligibility. It got us thinking. This is just the latest switch in a long line of COVID confusion, not just for one administration, for both administrations. Confusion has sort of been the hallmark of the pandemic. Let's go through it. Late February, CDC tells people not to wear masks. That was in 2020. Several weeks later, wear masks. March 2020, President said he'd hoped the country would get back to normal by Easter. That didn't happen, so in April, he suggested injecting some type of disinfectant. December 2020, the CDC urged people to quarantine for 14 days after possible exposure, then came down to 7 or 10 days. Keeps changing. May 2020, after a number of us got the vaccine, Biden said, get vaccinated or wear a mask until you do. That was the big bargain. To get vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. Now we move forward a little bit. May 2021, great day. CDC, fully vaccinated people don't need to wear masks because vaccines work. Trust the science, they said. July 2021, President Biden said July 4th starts the summer of freedom for the vaccinated. Get vaccinated. July 2021, just a few weeks later, masks came back because of Delta, but the argument was still get vaccinated, but wear a mask. 2021, August, President Biden talked about booster shots for all. Then you move here to a couple of weeks ago, the FDA says, hey, wait on that for a little while. We have XX date, but that was back in early September. Said, we're not really sure if the president was right on that. We'll get back to you. And then today, the CDC said, well, sort of you should get booster shots for some people, and then the CDC director overruled her scientists. With that, we bring in Chris Hahn and Jason Nichols. Professor Nichols, good to see you as always. Chris Hahn, host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast. Chris, start with you. Can you understand how some people are a little confused by the mixed messaging? Skeptical, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. But the thing is, this is a new virus, and the science on it is continuing to evolve. The variants of this virus continue to evolve. It makes perfect sense for people working in a hospital on the front line where people are coming in infected, suffering with symptoms, should have a higher protection. We know that once you get a booster shot, you get the full effect of that vaccine, and that vaccine efficiency wears off over time where it goes down. So we don't want to have breakthrough infections among hospital workers who we need to continue to fight this disease. People need to be patient. It's going to change again. It's going to evolve again. We just have to face the facts that this virus is going to be with us for a while, and we're going to have to adapt to it constantly.
Chris, it's Friday. I thought you were going to bring us good news. All of this confusion, and of course,
I wish I could.
Yeah. All of this confusion and the mixed messaging, and to your point, some things are out of the president's control, but it has not been good for the president's approval numbers. He ran on bringing COVID under control. 8 months in, most recent poll, Biden's handling of the COVID-19 response, it's now 48 approved, 49 disapproved. That is down significantly. Jason, the president blames the unvaccinated for a lot of things. Are they to blame for his falling poll numbers as well?
No, I think there was a really rough month for the president, including Afghanistan and many other things. And COVID didn't seem to be getting better. And some of that falls on the unvaccinated. We know that, 1 in 5,000 vaccinated people actually end up in the hospital. It's much more likely, or 11 times more likely to die of the virus if you are unvaccinated. And so a lot of the numbers and a lot of the issues that we have are in these states where people are not vaccinated. So that is an issue. But the poll numbers, I think, are kind of an aggregate of some of the issues that the Biden administration has faced recently, including the border and including Afghanistan. I think when it rains, it pours. I think once a lot of these things get in under control, people are getting vaccinated and in a larger numbers. 75% of America has at least one shot. And we're headed, I believe, in the right direction. The numbers, even in those troubling states, are falling. I think you're going to see the president's poll numbers improve, and things are going to get better for him right in time for 2022.
As we said, he blames the unvaccinated a lot. Did that again today. Take a listen.
We were moving along on COVID-19, and now we have all these people who refuse to get a shot. And now look at the people dying.
Every public health official I talk to, Chris, says trying to shame people or bullying them is not the way to convince the unvaccinated. Why does the administration, who says trust scientists, keep doing the thing that scientists say is not going to change people's mind?
Yeah, look, you're not going to convince the unvaccinated at this point. We've got to mandate vaccines for different activities that these people would like to do, like fly in a plane or take a train between states. Once we start doing that, you'll see them get vaccinated, and this disease will slowly disappear from this country. I think, and I've talked about this with you before, Leland. I believe that the president's poll numbers on COVID are being impacted by progressives who don't think he's doing enough to do those things, to mandate vaccines across this country, to get these people safe, because they are not safe right now, and they are making it unsafe for children who can't get vaccinated and healthcare workers. So I think it's time for some significant increases in the mandates on vaccines.
You've been consistent about that. One group that's not happy with the mandates on vaccines, actually, is BLM, the Black Lives Matter movement. Newsweek reporting here, go ahead and put this up. There it is. Vaccine mandates put Black Lives Matter activists on collision course with Democrats. Black Lives Matter says vaccine mandates are racist. Jason Nichols.
Yeah, I think that, number one, I read that article that you just posted up there, and a lot of those people weren't part of the global network. A lot of people that call themselves Black Lives Matter activists, they may be active in some way, but they're not connected to the Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, but does that take? I mean, there's still people who are calling vaccine mandates racist. So, do they not have a point just because they're not part of the Black Lives Matter movement?
So I think that to make the broad statement that Black Lives Matter is against vaccines, I think is incorrect.
Okay, so how about we'll make it simple. There's a number of people, and there's going to be a protest, we understand, in New York this weekend. of people, many of whom are African American, saying that vaccine mandates are racist. What say you?
I think that's a different statement. And yes, there is a lot of vaccine hesitancy, and I think some of this falls upon like what you said in terms of the CDC sometimes not being consistent. I think it falls upon or not doing enough, as Chris said. I agree there. I also think that a lot of this falls upon our history and our present in terms of the medical apartheid that we have in this country, in terms of how Black people are treated by doctors and by physicians, not receiving pain medicine at the same rates, women dying while they're giving birth. I think that there are a lot of reasons why people have to distrust modern medicine.
Fair enough, but that sort of brings me. Fair enough, and you bring up a lot of very valid points that are real and play out. But I get back to what I was saying with Chris. Chris, is the way to get people who are fearing the vaccine or vaccine hesitant for the reasons Jason just described, is the way to get them vaccinated is with more mandates or education?
Yes.
It's
mandates. We've educated everybody about this vaccine. It's free. It's available everywhere. People who are not getting vaccinated right now, we've tried giving them money. We've tried giving them college scholarships. It's time to mandate it. And look, the COVID virus does not care who you voted for president, does not care what color your skin is or where your family came from. It will kill you 10 times faster or 10 times more likely to kill you if you are not vaccinated. So everybody needs to get vaccinated. These people marching in the streets, we should set up a table to vaccinate them right there. It's ridiculous.
I agree and disagree with Chris. I do think...
Jason, I got 30 seconds why you disagree, then we got to go.
Yeah, so I disagree that we have educated sufficiently. I think we still need to educate people because there's so much disinformation out there to counter the education. We really need to push that very hard. I agree about mandates. I think that mandates are necessary, but at the same time, we can't give up on educating people, particularly when so much disinformation out there to counter it.
Professor, true to your profession.
That's fair enough.
Fair
enough.
We get agreement on Friday afternoon and evening with you gentlemen. Nice to see you both. Thanks. Always a good conversation.
Nice to see you.
All right, the White House. Well, they talked about a lot today, but they're staying silent on Hunter Biden as more revelations about his emails emerge. Will the White House own up to Hunter's shady business dealings? The White House today dodged more questions about the president's son's questionable business dealings. Earlier this week, we interviewed an author with new information on emails from Hunter Biden's laptop.
The president has said, and you have tweeted, that allegations of wrongdoing based on files pulled from Hunter Biden's laptop are Russian disinformation. There is a new book by a Politico reporter that finds some of the files on there are genuine. Is the White House still going with Russian disinformation?
I think it's broadly known and widely known, Peter, that there was a broad range of Russian disinformation back in 2020.
That was an answer to a question, just not the question Peter asked. More revelations. This headline from the New York Post. Hunter Biden emails boast ties to White House and China, in which Hunter's business contacts touted his access to his father, then vice president, and some members of President Obama's cabinet. Joining us now, Judy Kurtz, reporter and columnist for The Hill, our sister company. So she's here on a Friday working. We're glad to have you, Judy. Thank you. Nobody wants to do these segments about the president's son. But when you've got a White House that just won't even answer basic questions about it, are we kind of forced to?
That's a good question. I mean, Hunter Biden basically makes a living out of lying low at this point, but it's really not shocking that he's not going to want to weigh in on this. And the White House certainly is not going to want to extend this news cycle by commenting on these Hunter Biden stories. They don't want to draw more attention to it. But at the same time, I think these stories aren't going to go away on their own.
The question in the briefing room was from my old colleague, Peter Doocy, over at Fox News. He was referring to a book by a Politico author who we interviewed earlier this week. Take a listen to what he said.
This is a pattern that really dates back to Joe Biden's first term in the Senate and some controversy over some bank loans that his brother got back then, continues down to even this summer with Hunter Biden's foray into painting. And so this has been a theme of Biden's public career really from the start.
Okay, so where does it go from here? We have all this reporting. The White House just simply says, we're not commenting on it, shuts it down, or as you saw Jen Psaki deflecting. Do you just have to keep waiting for the drip, drip, drip?
Well, I think there's no question at this point that Hunter Biden was engaged in influence peddling when his father was vice president. But unless there's firm evidence that somehow ties Joe Biden to Hunter Biden's business dealings, whether he was profited off of them, had a hand in them, influenced them in some way, I think this is going to continue to be a back burner issue for the media.
You'd think influence peddling involving the vice president, Libya, China, Russia, Ukraine, some of our largest adversaries in the now president's son would not be a back burner issue. You'd think that the New York Times would have dozens of investigative reporters on it. In fact, they did when it involved President Trump and his kids. Why is this a back burner? Is there just not enough evidence?
I think there is a lack of evidence, of firm evidence in this case, and there's a lot going on that the media is covering. I think for the White House, this is like a low-level headache at this point. It's not quite migraine status yet.
Fair. The painting, Hunter selling his paintings didn't really help that migraine status. I guess this would be the question. What would bring this to be on the front burner, if you will, for the White House? What's the White House's nightmare?
I think if more does come out from these emails, then we could be asking a lot more questions of the White House about this issue. You mentioned Hunter Biden's paintings. He's trying to sell them for $500,000. Maybe he'll start talking more when those are up for sale, up for auction. It seems that when he's trying to promote something like his memoir that came out a few months ago, that's when he suddenly is much more visible.
Yeah, it's interesting. From that interview with Ben, this has been a theme of Biden's public career from the start. At some point, perhaps the American public either expect it or just have it baked in. Hey, Judy, it's great to see you. Thank you. Have an awesome weekend, all right?
Thank you. You as well, Leland.
All right. We'll be right back. All week, we've been talking about the ongoing and growing crisis on the southern border. Thousands are continuing to flood into the United States. The White House has been mostly silent on the issue until now, but the crisis is not going away. It's having a real impact on communities across the southern United States. This weekend, we're heading to Texas to find more about how those communities are coping with the crisis, what the administration could be doing to help. We'll see you live here on Monday night. Our new time, 7 Eastern, 6 Central, live from the Rio Grande Valley after having spent the weekend with the Texas Department of Public Safety. Have a great weekend.